The John Morris Show, episode 73.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
Oh, this you crazy mother.
Hey there, my name's John Morris. I'm a former U.S. Army veteran turned freelance web developer. And my goal for you at this podcast is twofold. First, I want to help you learn how to code. Second, I want to help you turn that code into a full-time living. Because if you're like me, what you want is the freedom, the satisfaction, and the income that you get from being a high-profile web developer. So if that's you, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, or YouTube so you never miss an episode. You can find all my past episodes and get subscribed at johnmorrisonline.com/John Morris Show. Also, as you get value from the show, consider becoming a supporting listener on Patreon because you'll help keep the show free for everyone and you'll get access to exclusive courses, source code, and Q&A sessions available only to supporting listeners. Visit johnmorrisonline.com/Patreon, that's Patreon, to become a supporting listener. All right, let's get into this episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to the John Morris Show, johnmorrisonline.com. This is episode number 73. It is Monday, April 25th, 2016, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon Central Time here when I'm recording this, so I am a little behind. I apologize for that, but I'm going to get this recorded and get it out to you here quickly. So I want to talk about we can't be friends. So I sent this out in the email newsletter this morning. If you're not subscribed to the newsletter and you want to get access to all of the information, kind of the basis for the information for the podcast before the podcast actually go out, you'll want to subscribe johnmorrisonline.com. You'll see it right at the top. You can subscribe there. And I wrote about this in that email newsletter today. The subject line, of course, was we can't be friends. And I wrote that I just deleted 12,499 people off of my mailing list. And yes, that is 100% true. I did that over the weekend. And if you know anything about email marketing, you know that that is a big deal. It's somewhat like lopping off your left arm because I spent a lot of time and money attracting those 12,000 people and getting them to sign up to my email list. And building an email list was really one of the first things that I was able to do well when I kind of got into online marketing. And so losing or getting rid of, actively deleting over 12,000 people was a pretty big deal to me. And I've been going back and forth on it for several months of whether I was going to do it, whether I wasn't. But I had to do it. And the reason why I had to do it, I think, is an important lesson for you when it comes to your career, whether it's freelance, whether you're going to work for somebody, whether you're going to build apps, also just life in general. And so I kind of wanted to talk about that and elaborate on what I wrote in the email newsletter today. So why did I delete 12,499 people? It's not half, I would say, 40%-ish. I had about 30,000 people on the email list. I got rid of over 12,000, so there's 17,000 some hundred on there now. So still a lot of people, but also a lot of people to get rid of. And the reason that I had to do that is because, and I don't mean this in human terms, I mean it in business terms, career terms, that was dead weight. And that's because of those 12,499 people, exactly 0 of them had opened any of my emails in the last 6 months. That's how I identified those people, is my software lets me see who opens my email. And those people were the people who hadn't opened any of my emails in the last 6 months. Now, that's a little tough to take, right? I mean, if you're on the email list, I send out daily emails. And I've been doing that for a while now. So These people are completely ignoring me. They haven't opened a single email in 6 months. So they're completely ignoring my email newsletter, and I think clearly want nothing to do with what I have to say in it. So that's why I had to delete them. And if you don't know, when you have an email list, when you have a service that does this for you, I use Aweber, and the more subscribers that you have on the list, the more you pay for that service. So having 30,000 people on my email list is obviously more than having 17,000 on my email list. But it's more than that, because if there were, if those people were interacting and responding, I'd be more than happy to pay what I have to pay. It's really not that much for those extra people. But the other thing is when you send emails, let's say of those 30,000, 10,000 of them go to Gmail. Well, if 6,000 of those people aren't even opening those emails, aren't opening any of the emails that I send day after day after day, Gmail kind of pays attention to that. And so it starts to get an idea of whether or not people are interested in your emails based off people opening them, replying to them, and so forth. So it also affects you at the email provider level. So you pay more for the service, but you also start to establish a sort of reputation with the email service providers. And so it can be harder to get your email messages into the inbox if you have too many people on your mailing list who aren't opening and replying and so forth. So business-wise, it was just something I had to do in order to help keep my open rates and click-through rates and all that stuff high from just a technical perspective. But the thing that I think is important for you is I had to do it for my own sanity in a way. And I went back and forth on this, and I really had a hard time doing it, but I actually feel relieved having done it. And the reason I feel relieved is because of you. And what I mean by that is the people that are left. Because I don't have to spend all this time worrying about people who aren't paying attention and trying to get them to pay attention. Instead, I can focus on the people who are paying attention, who are writing me, because I get emails every day. I get people who contact me on Twitter every day, Facebook every day, YouTube every day. Those are the people that I want to work with. And if you have obviously opened an email in the last 6 months, then you're someone who's at least at some level paying attention. And so I know you're serious. And those are the people that I want to work with. And like I said, that's an important lesson for you, because not every client or job is going to be a good fit for you. In fact, some are going to be an enormous pain in the butt and not worth the time at all. And you have to be willing to let them go. You have to be willing to move on. Because if you don't, those people will drag you down, they'll make you miserable, and they're going to cost you a lot of time and money. So you got to let them go. You got to move on. You can't get so caught up in trying to do everything that they want you to do, even things that just completely go against what you stand for, or what you think is right, etc. You can't become 100% beholden to a client or a boss or whatever. You have to keep your own sense of yourself. I'm not saying necessarily go out and get yourself fired today, but you have to be able to recognize when you're in a bad situation and it becomes about more than the money. That's the thing that it is about the money, but it becomes about more than that. It becomes about your own sanity. And sometimes a client may pay well, but they're not worth it. And so the important thing of all this, or the thing that I want you to really do as a result of this, goes back to something that I harp on all the time. People constantly tell me, why do you always talk about this? because it's absolutely critical. It's the core of everything that you do, and that is finding your niche. And when I say find your niche, I don't just mean the skill or the end result that you're going to provide. I don't mean Ajax forms. That's a part of it. That's the first step. You got to do that. You got to be doing and creating something that you love, that you enjoy building, that you find important and valuable. You have to be doing that. But it's also about the people that you're working with, that you're on the same page, that you don't have to pretend to be somebody you're not. If you have to pretend to be somebody you're not for a client, you're going to be miserable. And in the long run, it's not worth it. And so you want to find the buzzword these days is tribe. But tribe, niche, fans, followers, whatever. You want to find people who really get you and understand you, and they like you, and they trust you, and they want to work with you, and they appreciate you for being you. Now, the only way that you can do that, and I've alluded to this in past emails and so forth, the only way that you can do that is to actually be yourself, to put your true self out there. Now, I don't want to get too off into the woo-woo stuff here, but it's absolutely important. I talked about this in an email last week, that I often say things to almost as a check or a challenge to the people that are reading my email newsletter, listening to this podcast. Last week I took a little shot at Bernie Sanders, right? Because, whether I'm right or wrong, that the person who thinks similar to the way that he might think is probably not someone who's a good fit for my personality, because I don't think that way. So why would I want to be surrounded by a bunch of people who I have just a dramatic worldview difference from all the time? Now, there's some value in having those people in your life to give you different perspectives. Absolutely. But building a business around that where you constantly have to be something different than what you actually are, that's a recipe for disaster. So you have to actually say and do the things that demonstrate who you really are to attract people who are like you, who are like-minded. And they'll get you the most. They'll be loyal, not just because you're someone who is reliable and you do a good job and you know you can do the things that they need, but because they resonate with you on a personal level, on a deeper level. And again, so this goes back to knowing your niche and why knowing that is so important. Knowing who you are, what you do, what you stand for, having a perspective. It's absolutely critical, not only for being happy, but it's actually better for business. Now, getting into business a little bit here, in this month's Patreon-only e-course, if you're a supporting listener over on Patreon, I give you my 3-step method for finding your niche. This is something that I've used time and time again with myself and others to help them really hone in on what their niche is and how they can best serve people. So if you want to save yourself a bunch of time and headaches, dealing with clients that don't really resonate with you, working on projects that you're not really comfortable with, having a boss or working for a company that you really don't fit in well with, if you want to save yourself all that time, then I recommend becoming a supporting listener and getting access to the course where I'm going to cover that and a whole bunch of other topics related to actually getting paid as a coder. So to do that, head on over to johnmorrisonline.com/Patreon. I would greatly appreciate the support. You're also going to help keep this podcast and these shows going for others out there. You're going to get access to, depending on what level you decide to sign up for, but all the information's over there. You get access to all my source code, all of the courses that Patreon-only courses that I have. There's more than just the one I'm releasing this month. Plus, you're going to get priority access to the Q&A that I do every week for the newsletter and podcast, where I'll answer your questions first. So again, if that sounds like something you'd like to do, head on over to johnmorrisonline.com/Patreon. I appreciate it, and I'll see you over there.